So we are in chapter 30, and so it's a whole self-contained chapter. We're going to talk about the whole thing, but let's break it up in terms of reading. So we do verses 1 through 15, and then 16 through 31. So who read 1 through 15 for us?
I will.
Thank you, Carol.
3 days later, David and his soldiers reached Ziklag. The Amalekites had raided the arid southern plain and Ziklag. They had attacked Ziklag and burned it down, taking the women and everyone in the city prisoner, whether young or old. They hadn't killed anyone, but carried them off and went on their way. When David and his soldiers got to the town and found it burned down, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters taken prisoner, David and the troops with him broke into tears and cried until they could cry no more. David's 2 wives had been captured as well. Hinnom, I never can say her name, from Jezreel, and Abigail, Nabal's widow from Carmel. David was in deep trouble because the troops were talking about stoning him. Each of the soldiers were deeply distressed about their sons and daughters, but David found strength in the Lord his God. David said to the priest Abiathar, Ahimelech's son, "Bring the priestly vest to me." So Abiathar brought it to David. Then David asked the Lord, "Should I go after this raiding party? Will I catch them?" "Yes, go after them," God answered. "You will definitely catch them and will succeed in the rescue." So David set off with 600 men. They came to the Bezor ravine, where some stayed behind. David and 400 men continued the pursuit, while 200 men stayed there, too exhausted to cross the Bezor ravine. They found an Egyptian in the countryside and brought him to David. They gave him bread and he ate, and they gave him water to drink. They also gave him a piece of fig cake and 2 raisin cakes. He ate and regained his strength because he hadn't eaten any food or drank any water for 3 days and nights. Then David asked him, "Whose slave are you? Where do you come from?" "I'm an Egyptian servant boy," he said, "and the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I got sick 3 days ago. We had raided the arid southern plain belonging to the Sherethites, the territory belonging to Judah, and the southern plain of Caleb. We also burned Ziklag down. Can you guide me to this raiding party?" David asked him. "Make a pledge to me by God that you won't kill me or hand me over to my master," the boy said, "and I will guide you to the raiding party."
I would like to pick up.
He led David down, and there they were scattered over the countryside, eating, drinking, and reveling because of the great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from dusk until the evening of the next day, and none of them got away except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plundered, or anything else that they had taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock, saying, "This is David's plunder." Then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him and who were left behind at the Bezor ravine. They came out to meet David and the people with him. As David and his men approached, he greeted them. But all the evil men and troublemakers among David's followers said, "Because they did not go out with us, we will not share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go." David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that with what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and handed over to us the forces that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The shape of the man who stayed with the supplies is to be the same as that of him who went down to the battle. All will share alike." David made this a statute and ordinance for Israel from that day to this. When David arrived in Ziklag, he sent some of the plunder to his elders of Judah, who were his friends, saying, "Here is a present for you from the plunder of the Lord's enemies." He sent it to those who were in Bethel, Ramoth, Negev, and Jatir, to those in Aror, Sifmoth, Eshtemoh, and Rechal, to those in the towns of the Jerahmeelites and the Kenites, to those in Hormah, Warash, Athach, and Hebron, and to those in all the other places where David and his men had roamed.
Sorry. I always say, just pronounce it with confidence. Nobody will know that you're wrong. So, all right, this is the last episode of David in First Samuel, and I think it really shows David behaving in a very king-like manner. In contrast this and David's the way that he comports himself here in chapter 30 with Saul in chapter 28. Right. And so I'll just kind of open the floor to any comments, anything that people noticed, or any questions that anybody had, and then we'll get into some more particulars.
At this point, has David become king by the death of Saul? I mean,
No,
there's been no formal activity. Yeah,
not at
but
this
he's
point.
passed a statute and an ordinance. Must have done it later, right?
Well, yeah, or he did that for his men right there in Ziklag, because he had control of Ziklag. So, but maybe that then applied to Israel later. David is formally anointed king, or in 2 Samuel chapter 2 is when David is made king. And it's at Hebron is where he's made king, which is the last of the towns mentioned here that he gave some of the spoil to as a tribute.
In verse 6, it says David was greatly distressed because the people spoke of stoning him. Why? What was, and well, for all the people were embittered, each one because of his sons and his daughters, because their sons and daughters were lost. Okay.
They didn't care about their wives, just the sons and daughters.
Wow. David's the leader, right?
What?
David's the leader, right?
Yeah.
So
Buck
all the
stops here.
the buck stops with him. All the responsibilities are so yeah. So they oftentimes, when things happen that are tragic, we're always looking for somebody to blame, even if it may not necessarily be that person's fault. Aren't we very quick to point fingers?
And that doesn't happen today.
Right? Yeah, right.
They didn't have Joe Biden around then.
So yeah, no, it's a good point to point out. And some of the Bibles say David was in great danger, but that's really not the meaning of the Hebrew here. So the one that says greatly distressed, and I think that's kind of what yours said, or it said
Yeah, that's what
trembled or something like that. It's the same feeling that Saul has in chapter 28 when he sees the Philistine army. And so the reactions of the two are important to note, the contrast between what Saul does and what David does. And notice it says, but David strengthened himself in the Lord. David found strength in the Lord.
And it said that he asked for the priest to come with the ephod. He said,
Yeah.
that's that nice thing or whatever.
That it's the garment that we think contained like a pocket for the Urim and the Thummim, the dice. Yeah.
Yeah, because mine called it the priestly vest.
Yeah. So yeah, it's some means of inquiring of God that the priest carries around with him. But this is the only priest that escaped from Saul when he had all of the priests at Nob slaughtered. And this is the only one that escaped and ran back to David. So Saul didn't have him when he was scared and trying to ask God. But now David has him and is able to use. So yeah, you see how the way that they behaved over the course of this book and the actions that they took. Now David and the priests are in company together, and Saul doesn't have any. Saul just slowly continues to lose his any connection with God that he had, I think, is what you're seeing. So,
How sad.
yeah.
Are these the same Amalekites that Saul was supposed to take care of way back when?
Yep. Yes, they are.
They didn't kill everybody.
Nope.
Yeah,
David goes in and kills everybody.
Right. David was going around killing everybody because he didn't want anybody to snitch on him to the king, the Philistine king, Achish. But the Amalekites, see, those women and children, they make good slaves. That's why they take them alive. It's not because they're more compassionate, merciful. It's because there's an economic benefit to taking the women and the children. And again, that's just what they did back then. All of them did it to each other. That's how things were. Thank goodness that we've regressed, right?
Have we?
That was yes, that that was the tone behind my voice.
I'm with you.
One thing that's really come to my mind so often is in these times, it's amazing to me the numbers of people that work in tandem together. Thousands of people. How do you logistically manage all that? The food,
Yeah.
I can't even begin to think how that all took place.
600 men fighting with them. Yeah.
And then thousands in some of these groups. How do you feed them? It's
That's why they had to keep raiding and stealing the women.
I know, okay. Some,
Put them on the cook line.
I guess.
It seems like they're always talking about 400 men. I didn't know if there was any, it made me think about when Karen and David used to come.
Oh, David would be able to tell us.
400 men, it's always 400.
Mhm.
Yeah, nice. Imagine how it all came.
Me either.
Need, David,
That's what she said.
yeah,
Billman.
yeah.
He would probably tell you that 400 is a multiple
Yeah, exactly.
of 5 or 10, 12 or something like that.
He's in all of
A and M, it's the 12th man. I would expect that even though those were the olden days, right? Before Christ, that successful campaigners had things organized, had people out scavenging up food, and because they knew what it took to keep an army moving. I'd be surprised if it were otherwise, and there's probably a lot of, research out there telling us about that. I refuse to ask AI because it would give me the whole story.
How many fig cakes and raisin cakes do you have to bake this?
Yeah, it would take a huge amount of
Yeah,
support to move an army of even 400.
right.
And they would always go in tens of thousands.
I mean, we do that now. We just have
Yeah.
different levels of organization.
Yeah, oh yeah, and that's a big part of
Lots
any,
of technology that supports all that.
Yeah.
You know, they made do with what we have, and now that we have different things, we learn how to do it that way. But
Right.
if, but then there is something that's lost when you rely too much on the technology, you don't know how to do it the old way.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
That's your Boy Scout.
An Egyptian was happy to get a crust of bread, a drink of water, a few grapes, and raisins, I guess it was, and there was one other.
well, I see. So I think there's a couple lessons here, right? And that's one of them. Okay, the Egyptian slave that the Amalekite left behind ended up being their downfall because he's the one that showed David and his party the way. David, he was left behind because he was sick. They left the sick and the weak behind.
Mhm.
But David took him in and fed him and gave him his strength back, nursed him back to health. And there was a motive there, right? But throughout the whole chapter, you can see David taking action to be gracious to people and to be generous to people. And that actually it also serves his interests. But he's behaving like a king in a different way than Saul was behaving like a king. He's he's not ruling with with an iron fist. He's ruling with a compassionate heart.
The 200 that couldn't keep going. That was probably, there was probably some grumbling with the ones that kept going that, that they were treated the same as they were.
My commentary reminds us of Jesus's parable in Matthew chapter 20, when the day laborers are called out, some at the beginning of the day, some at the middle, some at the end, and then the end of the day, the master pays them each the same amount. And the ones that came at the beginning are grumbling and complaining, and he says, "Why are you complaining? Didn't we agree on this amount?
That's right.
What's it to you if I give them the same?"
It's my money.
Yeah. And here it says, they say at the end here in verse 20, it says all the extra. So they got back what was taken, but then some, right? So all the extra, the spoil, is David's. This is David's. It's his to decide what to do with it. And he's deciding to share it equally with all 600 men. And then also to give some to the people of Judah in the various towns that are hard to pronounce, but he gives them to those his friends there, which that was a political move, right? I mean, he's ingratiating himself to those towns so that he could solidify his claim to the throne. But it was also a generous thing to do.
I was going to say, it may have been a political move, but it was definitely a humanitarian.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a nice thing to do. Yeah. So I liked that he was very insistent on telling the 400, no, we're all going to get the same, because what they did was important too. No, they didn't go and fight, but they stayed back and they watched the supplies. The supplies that we left behind so we could move faster to catch up with the Amalekites. They stayed back and watched the supplies, and that's important too, and they deserve a share. It reminds me of when we look around at, we love to look around at all the different jobs and armchair what they deserve to make, right? But everybody deserves to live, and to have a share in what the community brings home, I think. And I don't think we should be sitting here saying one job is better than another, because it wouldn't be there if it wasn't needed, it wasn't important.
And not judge not lest you be judged the same. And and Paul gets into that with the body of Christ, Christ being the head of the body. And if the toe says to the thumb, well, you're not needed, and et cetera, you go through all that. Every part's important.
We just went over that
Yeah,
in
every
November.
piece of the
I
body.
just remember Granatelli's turbine car in Indianapolis. running like crazy. Man, that thing, nothing could touch it. And a $5 bearing failed and the whole car was out of the race. $1 million worth of automobile, ouch.
And this also generates a lot of, you mentioned, a lot of respect for David. So he's the people who were seen as doing the lesser jobs, guarding the supplies, were now seen as important. In David's eyes, they're seen as important. And he's right. And if you're leading a team, you need everybody going after the same goal. Reminds me of a story of when NASA was first getting going and they were trying to put a man on the moon. It was a business case, and they went in and they talked to one of the janitors that was at NASA, and they asked him, "What's your job?" He said, "To put a man on the moon." They said, "But you're cleaning the bathrooms." He says, "I'm cleaning the bathrooms so they have a clean bathroom to go into so we can put a man on the moon." His whole goal was to put a man on the moon, even though he was the person who was in there cleaning the bathrooms. So it was that perception, or that goal, that whoever was the team leader for NASA that put that in there. So everybody worked towards that goal. Every job was important. And that creates a lot of unity and camaraderie. And so David's bringing that together now, probably setting himself up, being king, and how he's gonna do it, gaining that respect.
Yeah, that is what we just talked about in November, because that was the whole point of my sermon there, was that where it's all important, right? It's, every meeting, even the menial stuff is part of it, part of building the
Just
kingdom.
just holding the door open for somebody and saying hello to them might brighten their day and change their attitude from one thing to something else.
Yeah. And with that Egyptian slave that he fed, and if he had just turned him away, he might not have found him, right? But instead, he takes him in. Sure, there's a strategy there.
Well, so now he's bringing somebody else into the fold.
It's also interesting to me. A lot of times in this book, they have long descriptions of what they're eating or what they're giving somebody. And there's like 2 whole verses about, they gave him part of a cake, pressed figs, and 2 figs and 2 cakes of raisins. And, it's just interesting that they think that detail is important enough.
Whereas the details we really want about this giant battle in chapter 31, completely missing. I agree with you.
I like the way this young servant bargains though, because he's afraid for his life.
Yeah.
Well, he's got
Being turned back over to the master,
Yeah.
and he's a slave again.
Dead.
Or he's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he says, swear to me by God that you will not kill me or deliver me to the hands of my master.
There's that oath taking again.
He also gives credit to God, because when he's handing that plunder out to elders, my Bible says, "Here's a present for you from the plunder of the Lord's enemies." So David's not, he's not taking credit for it.
Well, he does that in verse 23 too.
Takes credit for it?
When he no, he gives the credit to God. In verse 23, he's chastising the 400, or not all of them, but the worthless fellows among them, or whatever, the corrupt. And he says, don't do this with what the Lord has given us. He has preserved us and handed over to us the raiding party that attacked us. But yes, David gives all the credit to God. Even though David is leading the group, he still gives the credit over to God. So I just, this whole thing, it really makes me think about, some of us are retired and some of us are, working in various different offices, or, environments. And typically when we're working in a place, we're a part of a team, of some sort, right? And I think sometimes I see some people that can get very competitive or above it all and arrogant, feel like they're better than some of the other people on their team because their position is higher or something like that. Or kind of get this God complex of, it's all because of me. And I think it's just David is a good reminder of how we should comport ourselves in that environment. So not only in the church, but also in the other groups and the other teams that we're a part of. Any team really. Families, our sports teams, or
I've been fighting the urge
Yeah.
during this whole discussion
uh-huh.
to mention that column in the sports section of the Dispatch this morning about the bonuses handed out to the Buckeye coaching staff.
Oh,
Brian Day, 300,000. That's just up to now. There's more in the contract. The
Mhm.
Dispatch got the contract under Freedom of Information. And Matt Patricia got $500,000. And his salary is $3 million. He's the defensive coordinator. But in the manner of David, everybody on the coaching staff got at least 20% of their base salaries, which are big, big, big.
Absolutely.
They were spreading it around, not equally, but big bucks. Where does all that money come from?
TV. People that are silly enough to pay a
Taxes?
fortune for a seat.
Attendance is
Ticket
amazing
sales.
at those games.
Yeah.
The cost of tickets is
Yeah. I guess
outrageous.
that's it.
And it all comes
Yeah.
together and they have the money.
But, they were taking care of the staff.
Years ago, speaking of somebody saying their job is more important than somebody else's, et cetera. Years ago, and Jackie Gleason, he and Alice are standing there, and I don't know.
The
they had
honeymooners.
Some argument about something. And he says, I'm the king, you're nothing. I'm the king, you're nothing. He does that about 3 or 4 times. And finally she looks at him and said, big deal. You're the king of nothing. Yeah. And that, either somebody was trying to be funny or that was a very profound statement.
Yes.
Yeah. Big deal. You're the king of nothing. Yeah. And
She got to go to the moon before anyone else did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same here.
To the moon.
Right to the moon. Yeah.
One very politically correct.
The lunch shows back then worked.
But it was funny
Yeah.
and everybody laughed at it. No one got upset about it.
Anything else on chapter 30? I'll just kind of read the summary here, reflections on chapter 30 about, and I'll just kind of read the first sentence of each part here, because he says, this is a chapter where David acts like king. David is already demonstrating the qualities of the kingdom that God is bringing to Israel. It is a kingdom that finds its pragmatic power in giving, not taking. It is a kingdom that is willing to rearrange the customary patterns of economic distribution. And it is a kingdom that knows its resources for crisis are not only sociopolitical, economic, or psychological, but also spiritual. Nowhere is the character of the kingdom of God is bringing in David made clearer than in verse 6. In the midst of grief over his own loss and a leadership crisis that could become life-threatening, David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. So it's that reminder that even when we don't have anything else left, we can still draw upon the Lord for strength. So yeah, he really breaks down about, I know last week we were kind of talking about how it seems like God just kind of favored David instead of Saul. He actually talked about that here. He said, we could interpret this contrast simply as the difference between divine disfavor and divine favor. The story is deeply biased in favor of David as God's future for Israel, but it would be a mistake to see this contrast simply as a victimization of Saul, and to understand his distance from God as solely of divine making. Saul was rejected as the king God desired for Israel, but apart from a desire for ritual, apart from a desire for ritual certainty before crucial battles, Saul is never portrayed as a man who strengthened himself in the Lord. He doesn't pray to the Lord. He doesn't express trust in the Lord. The ephod is with David because Saul massacred the priestly community where it resided. Saul has been driven by his own jealousy, anger, and violence without reference to what he perceived the Lord to be doing. If the Lord does not answer Saul, he should hardly be surprised, since he has lived in separation from the Lord. By contrast, David is prayed to, consulted with, and given credit to the Lord throughout the course of these stories. There's a trustful confidence that marks David's interaction with the Lord. So he kind of points out that David's in constant communication with God throughout this whole book. And apart from trying to ask God if he's going to win a battle, Saul really doesn't do that throughout the whole book. The only time he tries to consult God is when he tries to go to Samuel to ask what to do next. But David is constantly praying to God and trusting God and strengthening himself in God and giving credit to God for his accomplishments. So I thought that was a good kind of breakdown.
David kind of goes to God directly, right? He doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't have Samuel.
Right. But he does. He goes to God directly.
Mhm. Yeah. Saul went through Samuel and then actually went through a medium to Samuel to God.
Yeah.
There is a movie out now that's animated
Just saw it.
on David.
I mean, I didn't see the movie, but I just saw the trailer. Yeah. Is that, I think it's coming out,
No, it's
right?
out.
Is it out now?
It's an angel film.
It started in the theaters.
Angel Productions.
And now it's at Dublin.
Oh, okay.
18. See it.
I was thinking I should go see it and see how accurate it is. Now that we've spent all of the fall studying this story.
And if they do something wrong, we just all stand up, say, it didn't happen that way.
Well, some of the parts we have to see which story they pick, which retelling they pick. So speaking of retellings, we've got here in chapter 31, the death of Saul. But then we're going to get a different version next year in chapter 1 of 2 Samuel.
We may have forgotten the first.
Yeah. Who kills Saul? Nobody knows. So, who would like to read chapter 31 for us?
Now the Philistines fought against Israel. The men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malishah, the sons of Saul. The battle pressed hard upon Saul, and the archers found him, and he was badly wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and make sport of me." But his armor bearer would not, for he feared greatly. Therefore Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell upon his sword and died with him. Thus Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor bearer, and all his men on the same day together. And when the men of Israel, who were on the other side of the valley, and those beyond the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook their cities and fled. And the Philistines came and dwelt in them. On the morrow, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. And they cut off his head and stripped off his armor and sent messengers throughout the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to their idols and to the people. They put his armor in the temple of Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. But when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard that the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and went all night and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan. And they came to Jabesh and burnt them there. And they took their bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh and fasted 7 days.
Okay.
So be it.
The end. Oh. I gotta say, pretty sad that Jonathan died.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I recall, he died earlier in this chapter.
He was killed. Yeah, at the beginning.
Yeah. But
That's in here in my Bible.
Well, they all died on the same day.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it was just yesterday that the ghost of
Samuel.
Samuel said, "You'll be with me tomorrow."
Yeah.
By the way, you're pitching tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It, not to skip ahead, but it's just, I think it's important to note that this is not a happy thing for David.
No.
I mean, it allows him to become king. It stops Saul from pursuing him, but he has a whole lament, a song that he composes over Saul and Jonathan.
Jonathan was his friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the next book, in the next chapter, he says, "I'm distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war perished." So, seemed he loved Jonathan more than his own wives.
Well, he was a good friend.
Yeah.
But it's tough when you lose a good friend.
Jonathan was always good to him too. What about this note about the men of Jabesh Gilead coming and taking the body and giving it a proper burial? What did you think about that?
kind of glad to see it. Didn't seem, in spite of Saul's problems, he didn't deserve to be left hanging on a wall.
Mhm.
Headless, yeah.
Play, headless, yeah.
Are those Jewish people or?
They are. Do we remember the history that Saul has with Jabesh Gilead? When he first became king, there was that that other king, oh, what was his name? Remember, it was the part that some of our Bibles had, but others didn't. Nash, I think was his name. And he was going around plucking out the eyes of the people of Jabesh Gilead, and so they put out a call to the rest of the Israelites to see if somebody would come and save them, and Saul answered the call, and that's when the Spirit of the Lord came upon Saul. So that was one of the 3 stories where Saul becomes king. That was the last one. And he musters up the people of Israel, and he goes and he liberates the city of Jabesh Gilead. From I think it's the Ammonites. They all have the same type names, but
That's the end of chapter 10.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the end of chapter 10.
11, yeah, Saul defeats the Amorites.
Amorites, yeah. See, the Amalekites,
Ammonites.
Ammonites,
Now Nahash.
Nahash. Okay, yes. Something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's that little piece I had in mind that. you didn't have in yours.
So that's why the people of Jabesh Gilead go and take his body down. 'Cause he's their hero. He saved them. Anything else on chapter 31? I know it's a short chapter.
So was it common practice, Chris? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Was it common practice for the people who win the battles to dismember the leaders so much like they did with Saul, or is that just a thing with the Philistines?
Yeah, remember David did the same to Goliath.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a sign of, I mean, for one, it's a humiliation against the other
It sure is.
side. But it's also just a sign of complete victory, you know.
Flexing muscles.
Yeah. And I remember David takes the head back as a trophy, basically. And so, but you know, they couldn't what Saul did not want them to do was to capture him alive,
Right.
so that they could humiliate not just him, but Israel.
Well, and beheading him and putting his body on the wall, Bethshan, it was a psychological move to
Yeah.
break the spirit
Mhm.
of the survivors.
Yeah.
Vlad the Impaler did that
Yeah.
with the Turks, and it stuck their heads on pikes all over the place, and the Turks would come along and see that and say, "Well, we're not going in there."
That's what the Romans did with the crucifixions.
Yeah.
That's why they crucified people along the side of the road.
So in the road, yeah, throughout history, people did that sort of thing.
Yes, Jesus was not crucified up on a hill.
Way away from prying eyes. No, he was right where everybody could see him. Yeah.
Did that with Mussolini at the end of the war. Hanging on a street.
Well,
Sitting on a hill far away.
Saul wanted to make sure that was all they could do. He wanted to make sure he could deprive them of being able to do anything else to humiliate his people.
He did the classic fall on his own.
He did. He fell on his own sword. So at the
To
end,
the next book.
right? Well, he either fell on his own sword or an
Or-
Amalekite killed him. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's one or the other of those stories. But
I was listening to this on the car this afternoon, main errands, and it immediately rolled over from the end right into chat or book two. And I said, wait a minute. I just read that.
well, we remember that it was all one book. The split is arbitrary that comes from translators after the fact. So It was all one book. So there's not really much of a transition. It just kind of keeps on going.
What would, not just these two books, all right, there were like 3 or 4 books. that-
Also with Kings. Yeah, first and second Kings.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was all one scroll. So um
And not divided into verses.
nope, not at first. But it didn't even have vowels to begin with. Just consonants. So,
No problem with translation. Everybody's guessing. And nobody can be wrong, right?
see what it was is they just knew it. You know, the vowels were there to help them, but they knew what it said. So but at the end here, Saul is not such a pushover, right? He has a heroic kind of a death. I mean, he falls on his own sword.
Maybe.
Maybe, but you know, even so, in the other version,
It's still his
Oh, no.
own sword.
no, in the other version, he has the Amalekite to kill him. So
Yeah.
in this version, it's
Well,
he doesn't want an uncircumcised foreigner to kill him, and
That's what the Amalekite told David. Now, did that
That-
really happen?
that's the other possibility. Amalekite's just boasting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Was he kind of stretching the truth there
Right.
some?
right.
Make himself look important.
Well, he got what was coming to him.
That's a stay tuned to next fall.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, mine in the next chapter says Saul's leaning on his spear, so
Yeah.
he's no good with a spear, so he probably missed kings. So he needed to ask somebody else.
He didn't follow the spear.
Yeah. No, he couldn't throw it, hit anything.
So
Broadside of the heart.
Probably didn't trust himself to hit it when he.
That's a-
Kept missing David's.
Calls a bad shot.
Do this and it goes here.
Well, you know, this young Amalekite boasting about this thing probably didn't realize the fact that when David said, "You're not afraid to stretch out your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed," the guy probably said, "I didn't look at that as Lord." Oh, wow, what a mistake.
He probably thought he'd ingratiate himself to David. I say, hey, it was me. I killed your enemy. Didn't realize how David felt about it.
When Saul got hit with some arrows.
That's what it says. Yeah, Richard's got him. Yeah.
The archers.
Mhm. He asked his armor bearer to kill him, but his armor bearer was unwilling, for he was terrified.
Well, then his armor bearer committed suicide. I mean,
Armor bearer also fell on his sword.
He got out of Dodge. you know?
Exactly.
That was probably tradition,
Hmm.
I bet.
Yeah, but yeah, it could be, yeah.
Kind of like going down with the ship.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Sad.
Killed by somebody
Yeah.
else because they didn't do it.
Mhm.
Well, my commentary points out that here at the end of 1 Samuel, the Israelites are no better off than when they first started. Remember way back in chapter 4 when the Philistines took the ark in the same place. This is the same place. They had taken the ark beforehand. And then they wanted a king, right? That's what they wanted. So it wouldn't happen again. Well, back in the same spot we were. So. See if David does any better.
Now we have to look at the second book of Samuel.
We already started, yeah. Well, all right. Anything else at all on 1 Samuel? Been quite a ride.
It's nice to head into the holidays you know, with Saul finally put to rest. She's been on the edge for quite a while.
It's good of you to say.
Well, thank you all for a wonderful study.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna, this concludes our study. Thank you. If you're watching along with us, we appreciate you. And Merry Christmas. Unless you're watching this 4 months later, then Happy Easter.
And Merry Christmas to you as well.